Hey, this is Danny, and you're listening to KRUZ Radio in the After Midnight Ramble, posted on 2-Bit Tales. Like I said in the last broadcast, I don't know where Johnny Kidd is today, but I've been going through some of his files that he left in a filing cabinet in the building basement and brought it up here to the studio. I thought it might give some clues as to where he is. I recognized Johnny's name on the cabinet because of a book I once read by him. Anyway, most of his stuff is in notes. I think he never got a chance to finish. But I did come across a story that he wrote about some guy named Jack Cole. I don't know who Jack Cole was to Johnny, but this is what he wrote. Now, the short version of this story happened around 1960. See, there was a guy by the name of David Jones out of Pittsburgh who built a Deuce 5-window coupe. That's a 32 Ford 5-window coupe. It was a show car that he called the Pineapple Duchess. One day, David Jones went to visit his ailing grandmother in a nursing home. And before she died, she gave him a $20 gold coin that would later be worth just over $7 million. It was one of about 20 1933 double eagles that fell through the cracks before they were all melted down that somehow found its way in her possession, and she wanted David to have it. So when she gave him the coin, she told him not to let his brother know about it. She said, "You know how jealous your brother gets sometimes," she said. Well, when David went back to his shop, he laminated that gold coin into the shifter knob of the Pineapple Duchess. And later that week, on his way home, while driving his truck, he got killed by a drunk driver. His brother Bobby took possession of the shop and sold everything. He didn't know what was in the coupe. He didn't know that the coin was in the coupe, and he didn't know what the coupe was worth anyway. So he sold everything. And he sold the Pineapple Duchess to a guy by the name of Frank McBride. It's been said that Frank shipped the coupe to Hawaii, showed it a couple times, and then they both disappeared. Now, Johnny heard about this story when he was a little kid, and he's been searching for the Duchess ever since. And these are his stories. And this is just one of them. The story starts in 2039 in the future. I don't know why he picked that date, but that's the date I got here. It says Seattle 2039. It was around 10 p.m. A black fedora was tumbling along a cold and wet sidewalk of Seattle's SoDo district. SoDo, that's south of downtown. As a brisk northerly wind blew the hat, it kept it steadily rolling in the dark. The few streetlights that remained lit cast its shadow down that vacant downtown street. And as the hat rolled, it finally came to rest against Cole's Auto Shop's bay door. Now, while sharp winds blew outside, 80-year-old Jack Cole was sitting at his desk in his warm office. On the wall next to him was a dark cherry laminate shelf with a handful of built model car kits that he somehow found time to complete. His favorite was a gold Deuce Highboy. More about that in another story Johnny wrote. But for now, just off to the right, on that shelf, were several large burgundy photo albums. Jack looked old, even for a seasoned hot rod mechanic. His hair was long and straggly, and his beard was in need of a trim. He kind of looked like Sean Connery in the '96 flick The Rock, before the haircut scene, only much older. Life had beat him down pretty hard. Working with automotive paints and such had taken a toll on his health, but he still had that hopeful spark in his eyes. Call it anticipation, perhaps. But that would soon be extinguished. His shop was dark, with one dim light shining above his desk as he took an album from the shelf and then placed it down in front of him. Its cover was well worn and washed out, coming apart in places. As Jack sat back in his chair, he reached for the bottom desk drawer and pulled out a 50-year-old bottle of scotch and poured himself a drink. In one corner of the shop was a car that had been covered up in a heavy army green tarp, and the tarp was dusty and oil-stained in spots, as if it hadn't been removed in decades. Jack took a sip from his whiskey, and just before he could open the album, two men walked in through the entrance door. Jack didn't recognize them, not right away. One of the men was wearing a dark blue navy watch cap, one of those wool caps. He walked over to the car that was covered up. The other man walked into the office and greeted Jack. His name was Billy Dunn. "Hey, Jack. Been a long time," Billy said. "Is that her under the cover?" "Yes." "See for yourself," Jack said as he poured himself another glass. "I'd ask you if you'd like a drink, but you didn't come here to talk story, did you?" he said. "Nah, I'm afraid not, Jack," Billy said. Just then, Billy slowly pulled out a revolver from the inside of his coat. He didn't point it at Jack. He just looked at it for a moment and then placed the gun on the desk next to the album. He was wearing a gold ring with a pineapple insignia with a small diamond in the center. Then he looked over at his partner with the cap standing next to the car. He raised his hand and pointed to the ring, tapped on it a couple times. The guy with the cap gave him a shallow nod yes. Billy quickly picked up the gun before Jack could even make a move. "See ya, Jack," he said, and then he popped him one. It happened so fast that the glass was still in his hand when he hit the back of his chair. As Jack slumped over dead, the glass fell on the album. Whiskey ran down the cover, dripped to the floor. Billy pushed the glass off, swiped away some of the whiskey, and then opened the album. Billy's partner, the guy with a cap, walked over to the office and stopped at the door. His name was Louis Shine. "Too bad, Billy," Louis said while looking at Jack slumped over. "He was a goner anyway, man." Billy looked back down at the album, slowly turned a few pages, and then stopped at a picture taken of Jack with some of his friends in front of a Hawaii Kai neighborhood bar. "Damn, that was 50 years ago," Billy said as he ran his fingers over the photo. "Looks like you in the picture," Louis said. "Our dead friend Jack here was an old man. I don't get it. You look the same." Louis said. "Man, that's not me in the picture," Billy said. "That's my dad with Jack." Louis asked him, "Is he still around?" Billy said, "No, he killed himself." Louis asked him, "Well, what was your dad's name anyway?" My dad was Denny Dunn, man," he said. "He was the only one who ever knew where the Pineapple Duchess was, till Jack found out, and then he stole it from my dad." Louis asked, "Who's the pretty brunette in the picture?" Billy said, "That was his sister. That's my sister Janet," he said. "But what happened to her?" Louis asked him. Billy told Louis that she was kidnapped by Somali pirates long ago and held for ransom. But he didn't want to talk about it then. He says, "I'll tell you more about it some other time. Not with Jack still sitting here, still warm." "Well, who's that other dude?" Louis asked. "Who's that other dude with the black hat and the pool cue?" "That, my friend, is Johnny Kidd," Billy said as he pointed at the pool stick Johnny was holding in the photo. "Funny thing is, though, that guy just don't age," he said. Then Billy looked over at Jack. took the jacket that was hanging over the back of his chair and covered his face with it. He said, "Come on, let's get out of here." They walked over to the car that was covered up in the corner. Billy grabbed the edge of the heavy tarp and gave it a yank down. It fell in a cloud of dust when it hit the garage floor. Louis opened the passenger door. Like I said, the car was a chopped deuce 5-window coupe. It was painted pineapple gold. It had white wall wheels and white naugahyde pleated interior. It was truly a stunning-looking hot rod. As Louis got in the coupe, he wiped away some of the dust with his hand from the dashboard. "Wow," he said, as his face lit up from the radiant gold finish. It reflected in the light. "Hey, boss, how do you start this thing anyway?" he asked. Billy gave him a cunning grin. He said, "Watch me, man, watch me." And then he turned the key cover to the right that was mounted on the dash. It was one of those cast dust covers that pivot to the right or the left. You know, the ones that hide a keyhole. "Now what, boss?" Louis said as he lit a cigarette while watching Billy closely. Billy slid the ring off his finger and inserted the pineapple crown into the female end on the dash, but it wouldn't fit. It just wouldn't click snugly into the keyhole that was also shaped like a pineapple. "What's wrong, boss?" Louis asked him. "I don't know," Billy said. "It's supposed to work. The coupe's supposed to start." Louis took a drag from his cigarette and said, "Clearly it ain't started." "I can see that," Billy said. "The only reason why it wouldn't work is if this is not the Duchess." And then he repeated, "It's not the Duchess," he said as he shook his head in disbelief while looking at the suicide knob for another sign. "All along, my dad must have thought he had the Duchess. And that means Jack, our dead friend over there, thought he had it too," he said. "And my sister, man, she would have been killed either way. We gotta get out of here," Billy said. Below the coupe, just under its floorboard, a buzzing sound was resonating up. "You smell something?" "Yeah," Louis said. "Kill that cigarette, will you? It stinks," Billy said. Louis flicked his cigarette, but gas had been leaking out of the fuel pump. Apparently, while trying to fit the ring into the keyhole, it activated the pump, and the bottom of the tarp was soaking up the gas. As soon as Louis tossed his cigarette across the shop floor, the whole coupe instantly went up in a firebomb that blew both doors off, with Billy and Louis inside. As the shop glowed bright orange inside, a brisk wind outside picked up that black fedora that had been against the roll-up door, and it began to tumble, once again, back down that cold and wet sidewalk. I swear at that moment, under that jacket, and just before the whole shop went up, Jack had a smile on his face. Johnny Kidd. Now, this has been from the Johnny Kidd Files. Johnny has always been searching for a long-lost hot rod that is thought to be hidden someplace in Hawaii, worth over several million, called the Pineapple Duchess. Follow along as I go through some of his notes and stories that he left in a filing cabinet. Maybe together we'll find the Duchess. This has been Danny on KRUZ and the After Midnight Ramble, posted on 2-Bit Tales. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.